In the first video about the Berlin City models, I introduced the exhibition in general and focused on the wall model in detail. In the second video, I presented the East Berlin model. Now we turn to the central model, which vividly illustrates all the changes in the city centre since 1990. Just as a reminder, the white buildings represent structures that existed in 1989. The brown buildings were added after Berlin's reunification, are currently under construction, or, if not shown in detail, are still in the planning stage. As with the first two videos, I originally recorded the commentary in German live on site, spontaneously explaining what came to mind. Now we move on to the model that I find most fascinating, as it best reveals the dramatic changes of recent years. We are again inside the building with the marker. Right in front of us is the old core of Berlin. The Alexanderplatz train station is located here, and the former fortification, built in the 17th century, extended down this way, looping back behind the castle and the cathedral. The St. Nicholas Church is clearly visible. It's white because it was already rebuilt in 1989. A lot has been built in this central area since then. Over here, I've covered the monastery district in another video. You can see how the area is now planned to be more densely built up, especially around the ruins of the old monastery church, which you can see here. Next to the parochial church, there is a remnant of the medieval city wall. But as I mentioned, I have already explored this area in more detail in a separate video. You can easily spot the TV Tower, St. Mary's Church, Berlin Cathedral, and the Humboldt Forum. Alexanderplatz, Platz means square, is another area undergoing transformation. Several high-rise buildings are currently under construction, though not all the ones depicted in the model are officially planned or approved yet. In Berlin, it often takes much longer than expected for buildings to be finally completed. Now let's pan over a bit. This former border area, known as Engelbecken, the Angel's Pool, has been densely built up in recent years, primarily with residential buildings. Here you can see the wall markings, a copper band running through in a zigzag pattern, showing the former division of the city. There were many open spaces in the former border area that could be quickly developed after reunification. During Berlin's division, no one wanted to build next to the wall in West Berlin, and construction was prohibited in the border area of East Berlin. Over here we have the Axel publishing house. When it was built in the late 1950s as an exception directly on the border, its location was a deliberate political statement, a symbol of free press and free speech directed at East Berlin. The high-rise blocks on the East Berlin side were later constructed as a countermeasure, both to block the view of Springer's headquarters and to demonstrate that East Germany could build high-rises too. Springer Publishing House recently built a new office building, fulfilling Axel Springer's long-standing dream of having offices on both sides of the former border. The modern architecture looks quite different in real life compared to how it appears on the model. I covered this in one of my cycling videos. Moving a little further south, you'll notice a jagged building. That's Daniel Libeskind's Jewish Museum. Its shape resembles an open Star of David or a lightning bolt. The Garden of Exile, with its stele, next to it is part of the museum complex, which is one of Berlin's most visited museums. Across the street is another building which is part of the museum. Continuing in this direction, we reach the so-called Tempodrom, a tent-shaped building that serves as a venue for concerts. The adjacent structures have not yet been built, but a high-rise made of wood is in the detailed planning stage, just like the buildings over here. Next, you can see the remains of Anhalter Bahnhof, once Berlin's most prominent terminal station. New construction projects are planned for this area as well. Looking a little higher up, there's a square-shaped building. This is the Topography of Terror, an exhibition located on the former site of the Gestapo headquarters and the Reichsführer SS offices, where the Nazi terror was administered. The Berlin Wall, a segment of which can still be found there, once ran right behind this site. The bright building is the Martin Gropius Bau, formerly the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences. Behind it, in brown and white, you can see the former Prussian state parliament, with its lower house in the foreground, and a bit further back, the upper house on Leipzig Street. Now, let's move to one of the most striking parts of the model, Potsdamer Platz and Leipziger Platz. Leipziger Platz, with its octagonal shape, stands out clearly. The Berlin Wall once ran straight north from here, leading up to the Reichstag, the current Parliament building, which you can also see on the model. Next to it, you'll find the small white Brandenburg Gate. In the 1990s, a massive amount of construction took place in this area. The Daimler complex, consisting of 19 buildings, was constructed for 2.2 billion, while the Sony Center, with its 7 buildings, cost 800 million euros. Its spectacular roof, inspired by Mount Fuji's snow-covered peak, is one of Berlin's most recognizable landmarks. Directly behind it, you'll find the Beisheim Center, and this area over here has also been developed. In total, nearly 10 billion euros was invested in this area. Moving westward, we reach the Tiergarten district, the Central Park. The Kulturforum, built in West Berlin since the city's historic cultural venues were all located in the eastern part, is visible. You can spot the Berlin Philharmonic, the Chamber Music Hall, and surrounding museums. Nearby are the new National Gallery and the State Library. The Embassy district has also expanded. The Italian and Japanese embassies, originally built in 1942 and 1943, were part of Nazi Germany's alliance network. Since reunification, additional embassies were established for Austria, India, South Africa, and the Turkish embassy is also located here. If you look further over here, you can see Scandinavia's diplomatic missions. The Nordic countries jointly built 5 embassy buildings along with a shared facility, which includes a sauna, a Finnish sauna of course. Over here is Germany's Conservative Party's headquarters, with its ship-like shape. The Central Park is clearly visible over there. The Victory Column marks the western edge of the model. Below you can see the office of the Federal President's staff next to Bellevue Palace, where the German president welcomes guests. And yes, Germany has a president. Here we see the so-called Federal Snake, a housing complex developed by the federal government when the decision was made to move the government from Bonn to Berlin. At the time, there were concerns that housing would become scarce. Today that is indeed the case, but back then it wasn't. In the end, not many MPs moved in. It's a bit noisy, and of course, they didn't want to live right next to each other. Over here are the Chancellor's Garden, the Federal Chancellery, and the office buildings for the Bundestag, the German Parliament, which were built around the Reichstag building, the current seat of Parliament. The main train station is located over here, and beyond it you can see the so-called Europa City, a vast construction area. The new blocks are visible. Much is still under construction, cranes are still standing. But the detailed buildings are already completed. Once everything is finished, I will make a final video about Europa City. The tracks over there are part of the planned S21 urban train line, whose completion has been repeatedly delayed. Let's see if it will be operational by the end of 2025. What else do we have? Here again is the former border area. A skating rink is located there, and over here is the new headquarters of the Federal Intelligence Service. I have also made a video about this huge complex. Finally, let's take a last look at Friedrichstraße, the historic north-south axis of Berlin. A little to the left is Gendarmenmarkt. A lot of construction took place here in the 1990s. 10 billion euros was invested in buildings along this street alone. Berlin has undergone immense changes and continues to evolve. This transformation is particularly well depicted in this model. With my videos, I wanted to give you a first impression and a small preview to inspire further exploration. I highly recommend visiting the exhibition yourself. It is also available online, and, of course, coming to Berlin to experience the city and see the results in person. Let me know in the comments if I succeeded and what you would visit first. I wish you lots of fun and all the best. Thank you for supporting my channel.